And with that introduction, the Redeeming Eden Cycle Tour is back in action. So I'm here in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. This is day one of the Redeeming Eden Atlantic Coast Cycle Tour, React. Three big things I want to talk about, but I've got a busy day ahead of me today. Thank God I'm here, I'm starting. I've already had some wonderful opportunities to witness to some friends. It's just been really good. Met some great people so far. Got a lot to talk about with the train ride and with getting here and the new bike and several other things. But I've got to get on the road. I'm crossing the Everglades today and not really looking forward to that, but I am looking forward to being on the bike. So anyway, three big pieces of information. Number one, the Redeeming Eden Atlantic Coast Cycle Tour, React. I need your help. I need you to react. I need you to share these videos, like these videos, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Let's share this with everybody that we can, especially here toward the beginning of the journey, so that we can, you know, have people that get to enjoy the journey the whole way with us. Second thing, new bike. I'm going to do a full bike video, hopefully in the Keys. I was going to do it at the house and I just couldn't find any background for it. So I think I'm going to actually do it like with the water in the background or something. I mean, I'll do it wherever the Lord puts it on my heart to do it. And the third big piece of information is the Cody Jordan Forever Funeral Fund. I rode for him on day 4 of the Coast to Coast Cycle Tour. And he was the husband of a very good friend of mine, Emily Jordan. She was one of the first people who really kind of led me on the path to Christ. And early in 2020, her husband passed away from an overdose. And so I prayed about it all the way across America. You know, how can I help her? How can I help other people? How can we really do something here? And so she is going to actually like write a letter or Zoom call or conference or phone call to these families and kind of share with them in her brokenness, because she lost her husband, and hopefully be able to minister to these families who have just lost someone who is so important to them. So yeah, that's the real three big pieces of information this morning. I have got to get on the road. The sun is coming up quick and I have got to cross the Everglades. So let's go. I love you guys. I'll see you later. Alright, so it looks like I've got a few minutes here while I'm riding on this berm that separates the Everglades from Fort Lauderdale and Florida proper. So I'm going to talk about Redeeming Eden and what it is, just in case you're new to the channel, or in case you've seen a future video, and I referred you back to this one for my testimony and the testimony of what Redeeming Eden is doing. In 2007, I got saved at a Christian rehabilitation facility from a severe IV use, opiate and cocaine addiction. Worked for that rehab for about 6 years. God really started to show me that, you know, we need to help find the lost and brokenhearted and captive, and show them the love of Jesus so that they can be set free, because that's what it took for me, was the love of Christ. And so I wanted to share that with everybody that I could. Ended up deciding to go back into a secular job though. And about 2 years later, had a back surgery that put me back on opiates and found myself just flailing around again outside of the calling that God had on my life. So I started to pray about starting a rehab, and just kind of put it off on the back burner. Had a Jonah experience, I guess you would call it. And a few years later, had a mouth surgery that put me back on opiates again. And so I realized at that point in time that I was going to die if I did not really put my 2 feet forward in helping others find recovery, the calling that God has on my life. So I talked to my pastor about starting a rehab, and he asked me how I would do it. I mentioned, you know, somewhere near in the Appalachian Mountains in Tennessee, that general area. And he said, "Do you know anybody up there?" I said, "No, I don't." And he said, well, I don't feel good about it. Why don't you go back and pray about it and formulate something that, that I can also be on board with in order to bless your ministry. I said, okay. So I went back home, and my wife and I were talking in the garage. And she was, just essentially asking me, how would you do it? You don't have any money to take. You can't use our funds. You can't, we're not going to spend a bunch of money trying to get something started that may not or may work. And so I had faith that God wanted to do this. And I said, well, I guess I would just ride my bicycle to Tennessee. And she said, Adam, be serious. And for the first time I was. Now, to let you understand why she said be serious, I hadn't rode a bicycle since I was 15 years old. And this was last year, January of 2020. And I was 37 years old. So, yeah. Anyway, talked to my pastor about a bicycle ride for addiction recovery awareness. I could start a YouTube channel and ride across the United States through 48 states and just bring awareness that addiction recovery options are available through churches, rescue missions, Celebrate Recoveries, rehab facilities all over the nation and all over the world. And at the same time, I was losing a lot of friends to the fentanyl epidemic. And God put it in my heart to ride for a person who had passed on each day of the ride. And so I set out from my home in Mobile, Alabama with $15 in my pocket and made it all the way to Fort Myers, Florida, which was the first tour, the Florida Cycle Tour. And at the time, I really didn't know, whether it was going to be something that I could actually do or not, having not rode a bicycle in so long, or whether God was going to provide. And as it turns out, I was able to do it, and God did provide through amazing circumstances that you can go back and watch if you so choose to do. God just really put his hand all over the ministry. And instead of being like a ride for a future ministry, years down the road, it turned out that Redeeming Eden became a ministry in itself. I was able to speak at Celebrate Recoveries and churches and rescue missions, and it was just a wonderful, wonderful experience. So I got back home and started praying about a Maine to Key West tour. Well, COVID had happened at the time, and so Maine was closed down to non-essential travel. So I started, kind of trying to recalculate and ended up coming up with Seattle to Key West. I wasn't able to complete that ride. I actually came back for my son's first birthday on Halloween of last year, but I did make it from Seattle, Washington, around the Olympic Peninsula, down the Washington coast, down the Oregon coast, across Oregon, through Idaho, through Montana, down through Wyoming, to Yellowstone National Park. Day 49 of the last ride, the Coast to Coast Cycle Tour, was one of my favorite days. If you want to go back and watch one from a previous tour, I highly recommend that video. And so I rode down, and this was all on a donated giant bicycle from the first tour. It's just been amazing how God has put this whole thing together through friends and through churches and through really everyone. I have no one but others and God to thank for allowing this ministry to be what it is and to continue. And so I made it through Colorado. I passed Hoosier Pass at 11,539 feet, east through Kansas, east through Missouri, east through Kentucky, and east through Virginia to Yorktown, Virginia. It ended up being about 5,000 miles on a bicycle after my previous 1,000-mile trip through Florida. And so in order to get 48 states, I had at that point in time completed 12. I'm back in Florida, which is the 12th state. And God just really moved the entire way across. It's also a networking opportunity, not just to meet other people and, find financial support for building the rehab and for supporting the journey, but really just to make godly connections with brothers and sisters, to meet the saved and the unsaved, the lost, the brokenhearted, and the captive people on this journey, and just tell them about my testimony and what Jesus did for me. And so at this point in time, I am doing the Redeeming Eden Atlantic Coast Cycle Tour, REACCT, REACT. and I will travel from Fort Lauderdale to Fort Myers, where I'm going to meet up with Ends of the Earth Cycling, and 50 other cyclists and myself are going to ride from Fort Myers to Key West, Florida together. Then they all go home, and I ride from Key West to Canada, Lord willing. I've got several, different options in case I'm not able to make it in the time that I have allotted. I'd like to be back home roughly July 4th to July 16th of this year. And so I'm going to just do the best I can and let God kind of dictate and ordain the path that I take. He's done it so many times before. If you watch some of the previous videos, it's just amazing how God has just done it all. I don't plan any days. I don't plan where I'm going to be. I just ride and end up wherever God wants me. So the next tour is going to be in 2021, fall of 2021, where I hopefully will be able to ride with a good friend, Ian Goff, who's been a faithful prayer warrior and sponsor, donor of this ministry, who he and I will ride the Natchez Trail through Mississippi up into Tennessee. He'll go back home. I'm going to ride Tennessee a little bit and then down through Alabama and kind of knock out Louisiana, Mississippi, Tennessee, and Alabama. Then 2022 is going to be the Midwest, so that'll be, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Michigan, Wisconsin, Ohio, kind of all the Midwest states there. And then very last tour is going to be in the Southwest. And I'm actually going to finish my ride in Utah in Monument Valley, where Forrest Gump ended his run. I have a lot of things in common with Forrest Gump. I'm from Mobile, Alabama, which is right near Biola Battery, and the fictional Greenbow, Alabama. And I have an ex-girlfriend named Jenny. I've got a big beard. So with all the coincidences that kind of lined up for me to be from where I am from, and to all of a sudden out of nowhere just decided to start riding my bike across the country. I hope to end there in Monument Valley and get nationwide media recognition, set up a GoFundMe, and actually really supply the funds to build Redeeming Eden, the Garden Rehab. But I can't look too far forward at what's going to happen. I kind of have to just look at it one day at a time. And if I miss out on the fact that this is a ministry right now where I am doing what I'm doing, then I've missed the whole point of what Jesus said when he said, go and make disciples of all nations. So, it's been really amazing. I had a donated bike, and the first donated bike I got was donated to me after my first bike that my church bought for me, Luke 4:18 Fellowship in Mobile, Alabama. My first bike just fell apart. It was a Walmart bike, Walmart touring gear. I highly do not recommend, 10 out of 10, don't recommend trying to bicycle tour on a Walmart bicycle. However, my bike fell apart about 6 miles from a church that had a bicycle ministry where they were able to donate a giant bicycle to me, and I was able to ride that across the country. In the Appalachians, it really started giving me fits. It was making some strange noises. I was having a lot of trouble, had to send a lot of things home. Couldn't power the bike up through the mountains like I thought I was going to be able to. And so, between the last tour and this one, I had been praying, God, I need a new bicycle. What do I do? And so, and John Tellick in Berea, Kentucky, gave me $1,000 and said, I want you to buy a new bicycle. And so that was kind of the release that I needed, that the Lord wanted me to buy another bike. So I got back home, started doing some researching online, found out that Surly Disc Trucker was the go-to touring bicycle. Called a few of the places in the area, got quotes on it. Really set the bike up for exactly what I'm doing, and learned a lot of lessons on the previous journey that I've applied and bought parts for this one that are so much of a help so far already. But I called Bicycle Michaels in New Orleans, and Tim Eskew there, what an awesome guy. He took my order over the phone, got everything ordered. It took about 3.5 months to get all the parts in, and I was able to pick up this bike just right around February 5th, 6th, somewhere in there, right around my birthday this year. And so I am on a Surly Disc Trucker now. For the first time, I'm on a bicycle that was made for what I'm doing, which is so much of a help. I cannot say how much of a help that is. effectively enough. And so my church also sponsored part of the bicycle. They paid almost half of the entire bicycle off, aside from the $1,000 donation. So I'm so thankful for them in doing what they did there. But, as I pedaled across the country, and, each day I would pray for these people who had lost a loved one that would reach out to me and ask me to ride for their loved one. And God really started to put it on my heart that, these families are brokenhearted. Luke 4:18, the church that I'm a part of, the verse talks about, that Jesus came to set free the captives, to heal the brokenhearted. And so, a lot of my ministry is setting free the captives, but, I realized it was becoming a good opportunity to help heal the brokenhearted. And I talked to so many families who've lost loved ones from overdose, from drunk driving accidents, from so many different avenues of drug addiction, that I realized that they're broken and hurting too, and that they need Christ just as much as someone who's captive. And so each day I pedal for and pray for, the family that I'm riding for. Pray for their friends, pray for their loved ones, pray for their children, their mothers, their fathers, their spouses, anyone who was connected to them in that death and in losing them. And God just really started to open my heart that this is a huge place that the church is kind of missing out on in ministry in some form or fashion. And as I talk with more and more people, the death always comes by surprise. Sometimes they know that the person's in active addiction, sometimes they don't. But there's never one person who says, yeah, we knew this was coming. They had that feeling, but they didn't know this was the day it was going to happen. And because of the addictive lifestyle, most of those families have already either, participated in or have been, I guess, monetarily drained from that person's addiction. So they don't even have money for a funeral, which is hard. I actually heard a story about a guy who had to bury his brother, and they had to do it in a pine box, and they had to actually dig the grave for his brother by hand themselves. They couldn't even afford someone to come and dig the grave. So with the funeral costs the way that they are, I realized that this is a hole where we can reach in and we can not only memorialize the person that had passed away, but also kind of reach in and minister to the families in that time. And so I started the Cody Jordan Forever Funeral Fund, and I'm just hoping that that's going to be something that really is able to minister to the families. Emily is going to talk to the families when they reach out and need help with funeral funds. And like I said, I'm just going to write the account back to zero. It's got $100 in it right now. And if someone passes away, of course I won't write the family or the people a check, but I will gladly write the funeral home a check in these circumstances, and then have Emily get in touch with them so that she can share in their loss and that we can share in their loss together as a ministry and as a family. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now, headed up the Atlantic coast, just kind of gonna check out everything here, meet people, explore many different areas and different people types and people groups. And one thing I found consecutively over and over again is that people need Jesus. It doesn't matter where they're from, they need him. And so that's my goal, is to reach out and share him with those people who need him the most. I love you guys. Alright, so I stopped here at a park with a little pavilion that is on this Highway 27 north going up to Lake Okeechobee, and the nature around me just sounds amazing. But I stopped to make some of these Knorr pasta sides, 4 cheese pasta, because I knew there was not going to be anything on this entire 60-mile stretch. So I'm going to eat, rest for a minute. I found a little spot I can jump in the water and get back on the road. So apparently I forgot my spoon. How about the old insurance card? Whatever works. Well, I didn't know it existed, but my prayers were answered. It's Kansas plus water. This has been the straightest, most level piece of land since Kansas that I've been on. But this river runs right next to it all the way. So I'm gonna find a lot more opportunities to jump in that. It is hot today. But I'm gonna keep moving. Love you guys, see you later.